2NURFM, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
A lot of rhetoric is being thrown around at the moment. It's one of those amazing things. If you're interested in American politics, it leaves a lot of us wondering how it all works, and it seems to just rattle on and on and on and on. But there wouldn't be too many people who haven't heard about or heard some fairly interesting things come out of the mouth of Donald Trump. And at this stage, members of the Republican Party, some are for him and a lot of them aren't. So it's very, very interesting. I thought we'd have a chat this morning. Our usual talk on politics, Associate Professor Jim Joes from the Newcastle Business School. We're talking about the Donald Trump effect. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Todd.
Look, there's so many things being bandied about. I'm not suggesting that we bet on things, but proving Australians will bet on two flies walking up the wall. There's a lot of money being held from Australians on Donald Trump becoming the new PM, and apparently Sportsbet will have to pay out over $700,000 if he wins. And he started at $201. Now he's at $3.50. And they're saying he's as scary as the jihadists. What are your thoughts, and how would Australia be affected if he did become president?
Well, that's a tricky one to answer because there are sort of multiple layers involved. I think that the most direct one is in terms of Australian foreign policy and the capacity for Australia to maintain something approaching an independent foreign policy position. We are generally locked into, broadly speaking, the US worldview of geopolitics, and through various treaties and our past history, we go where the US goes. So, for example, when the US decided to go into Iraq to invade Afghanistan and so forth, we followed suit. And there may have been independently good reasons that the Australian government chose to do that, but I think largely it's the US called upon its allies to stand behind it when it made its decisions. Now, in most cases, we might say, well, there's arguments on various sides about of the wisdom of those actions, but for the most part, there is some degree of rational debate and choice. What we see with Donald Trump is a particularly aggressive view of the world. A view of smack down anybody who gets in your way, never apologise for being a nasty person because it's a nasty world and you just get out there and be nastier than the next person.
Well, it seems like he's carried over his apprentice facade into world politics, and that's scaring a lot of people.
Well, yes, and we need to be a little careful. I mean, this is a celebrity person who's made his name as a celebrity rather than any expertise in business and so forth. He inherited his wealth and has parlayed that into sort of celebrity status. And his behaviour during that period, if you like, showed a very negative way of engaging with the world. Now, there is the possibility that once, if he's elected, that he might temper his views and behave in a more statesmanlike way.
Well, we had this discussion off air and I said that to you. I said, is there a possibility this is all a bit of a game, a bit of a shock and awe tactic to get him into the White House? Then once he's in the Oval Office, he realises that, hey, hang on a minute, this isn't going to work on a global scale. But you don't think so, do you?
I don't share that view. I think that there's a certain... If you can even have levels of shock and awe, there's a tipping point, and he's in my view, past the tipping point in the sense that he's unleashed a whole wave of behaviour in the US that even if he personally chooses to rein himself in, he's unleashed forms of behaviour which are absolutely, in my mind, and this might just simply be, a biased view, but they're reprehensible forms of behaviour where violence is advocated or accepted as a normal and appropriate way of dealing with disputes. And I guess at a general level, when you have somebody in a very influential leadership position, such as the presidency of the US or the prime ministership, when they behave and state things which are perhaps beyond the boundaries of what
normal people would consider reasonable.
It unleashes some of the, shall we say, the less stable elements in the wider society, and who feel that it's okay to punish people who are different from themselves, to attack those who they believe are responsible for their situation.
Couple of quick questions for you before we let you go this morning. If Donald Trump wasn't the celebrity Donald Trump and the property baron, if he was just a governor from a small American state who was taking this attitude, one, would he have gotten this far along the line? And two, do you think he can become president of the USA?
Well, the answer to the first question is it would be unlikely that he would have got himself to the stage that he has. On the second question, there is a really strong possibility that he could become president. The Republican Party, as you say, is divided, and some of the senior members of the party are trying to mobilise opposition to him in a way to keep him from becoming the nominee for the Republican Party, but it might be too little too late. And we have to remember, if I can quickly squeeze this in, he is appealing to people with genuine grievances who, over the past decade or more in the US, have watched their lifestyles change. They've watched all the sorts of things that they thought were important be sacrificed in one way or another, and they blame the various elites in both parties and past governments and the current government. Trump appears to be a breath of fresh air because he's not beholden to any of them, and that is his attraction. However, he's mobilising that discontent in ways that will possibly backfire in very nasty ways. And for Australia, it may be a small ripple effect. I hope it's a very small ripple effect. But in the US, it may have many, many deeper ramifications in a society that's already got some serious issues to grapple with. Trying to solve those with a sledgehammer and prejudice and other forms of violent sorts of behaviour, that's a recipe for disaster. So in many respects, personally, I would like to hope that the US electorate comes to its senses and sort of steps back a little bit from the Trump effect. What they're going to put in his place in the Republican Party is anybody's guess
right about now. So.
And maybe it's opening the way for Hillary Clinton, if she gets the Democratic nomination, to be better positioned to take the presidency than she would otherwise if they'd had a different and perhaps more moderate candidate in the Republican Party.
A chance of possibly winning by default. So there we go. Thank you very much. Associate Professor Jim Joes, having a look at politics and the Donald Trump effect.